It all started on a business trip, just a quick getaway to a quiet city for a few days of meetings and rest. I'd booked a room at an old but well-reviewed hotel near the city center. The lobby was elegant, with vintage decor and a warm, welcoming atmosphere. The receptionist checked me in with a polite smile, but there was something strange about the way she handed over the room key. The hotel was charming, though a little old, and I'd heard whispers about it being vintage, which probably meant it was a bit worn down. Still, nothing seemed unusual, and I was just eager to get to my room and relax. When I entered my room, it was quiet, almost too quiet. The building had thin walls, but there was no sound of traffic or the usual hum of a busy hotel. I heard the occasional creak of the floorboards, which I figured was normal for an old structure. But then, around midnight, I woke up suddenly, gasping for air. I had been dreaming about something heavy pressing down on my chest. I sat up, heart racing, and looked around. The room was still and empty, except for the dim light from a lamp on the nightstand. But when I turned my head to the bathroom mirror, I froze. There was a shadow behind me, faint, but it was there, reflected in the glass. My stomach dropped.
Wow.
I quickly turned around, but the room was empty. Nothing was there. I tried to shake it off, convincing myself it was just my imagination, or maybe the stress from traveling. I locked the bathroom door and crawled back into bed, trying to fall asleep, but the feeling of dread wouldn't go away. The next day, I brushed off the weird experience. I had a full schedule of meetings, and by the time the evening came, I was exhausted. But when I lay down to sleep, the silence in the room felt wrong. It was too quiet. I couldn't shake the sense that something was watching me. Around 2 a.m., I woke up again. This time, I definitely heard something. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, moving outside my door. Then came a knock. Knock, knock, knock. I froze. Who could it be at this hour? I didn't want to answer, but the footsteps moved away, and I figured maybe it was someone leaving. Then I heard the door handle turn. The handle rattled. It was like someone was trying to get in. My pulse raced, and I jumped out of bed, rushing to the door. I looked through the peephole, but there was no one there. The hallway was empty. I was confused and freaked out, but I checked the lock, making sure everything was secure, and crawled back into bed. But the feeling of being watched wouldn't leave. The room was unnervingly cold, and I felt like something was lurking just out of sight. By the third night, I was on edge. I decided to speak with the hotel manager, thinking maybe I could change rooms. When I asked about the strange occurrences, the manager's response was unsettling. He didn't seem concerned. In fact, he just gave me a vague, almost rehearsed answer about how it was an old building with a lot of character, and that nothing unusual had ever been reported. That didn't ease my anxiety, but there was nothing else I could do. I decided to stay one more night, telling myself I'd check out early in the morning. That night, things escalated. I woke up, but this time it wasn't just footsteps or a knock. It was frantic. There was something at the door, and it was banging, shaking the whole room. I was terrified. I rushed to the door, but it was locked from the inside. The rattling stopped suddenly, and the room fell completely silent. Then the lights went out. Completely. I fumbled for my phone, but it was dead. My heart was pounding as I stumbled through the dark. There was a sound in the corner of the room, scratching, like something was moving. My breath hitched, and I could feel the air grow colder. The sound came closer. Suddenly, I heard whispering, low and indistinct, like someone was standing right behind me. I spun around, but no one was there. My mind raced. Was I imagining this? Or was there something truly in the room with me? The next morning, I packed my things as quickly as I could, not wanting to spend another second in that room. I went to check out, hoping to escape the creeping dread that had followed me since I arrived. When I went to the front desk, the receptionist who had checked me in noticed my pale face. She asked if everything had been all right.
Everything is all right.
I hesitated for a moment, but then I couldn't keep it in any longer. I told her everything. The knocking, the footsteps, the cold spots, the feeling of being watched. She didn't seem surprised. Instead, she leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. We're sorry about your experience, but that room, it's been reported by several guests over the years. People say it's haunted, but we can't confirm anything. It's just an old building with a history. I didn't know what to think. All I knew was that I couldn't stay there any longer. I left the hotel feeling disturbed and unsettled, but also relieved. As I walked out, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was in that room, whatever had been watching me, was still there. I haven't stayed in another hotel since that night. It was supposed to be a fun road trip, a spontaneous getaway with friends to the mountains, a break from the routine, an escape from the daily grind. My friend Liam had rented a car for the trip, an old sedan with a bit of mileage on it, but it looked fine on the surface. We loaded up with snacks, music, and a sense of adventure. It was just a simple drive to the countryside, or so we thought. We left the city around noon, the sun shining, the roads clear. Everything felt perfect, like one of those carefree trips you see in movies. The plan was to drive for a few hours, take some photos, and camp out overnight in the woods. But things didn't stay that way for long. Around 3 hours into the drive, we were deep into unfamiliar territory. Remote highways, empty stretches of road, with nothing but trees and fields on either side. We were joking around, enjoying the drive, when something strange happened. The radio, which had been playing our favorite songs, suddenly cut out. We thought it was just static, so we fiddled with the dial. But then it came back on. But it wasn't music anymore. It was a low, distorted voice, repeating something over and over. It was hard to make out, but it sounded like, "Turn back. You shouldn't be here." Liam tried to turn the radio off, but it wouldn't budge. The dial wouldn't move, and the volume was stuck at a low hum. He slammed his hand on the radio, and just as quickly as it started, the voice stopped. The radio switched back to a music station, and we all sat in stunned silence, exchanging confused glances. "Must be some weird glitch," Liam said, shaking it off. "It's an old car," but none of us could shake the feeling that something was off. By the time the sun began to set, the mood had shifted. The atmosphere in the car felt heavier, the air dense and thick. The roads were winding now, and we were getting further and further from any signs of civilization. The GPS was glitching too, constantly recalculating, even though we hadn't made any turns. It was as if the car didn't want us to go where we were headed. Then it happened again. The car jerked forward suddenly, almost as if something had pushed it. I felt my stomach drop, and we all looked at each other wide-eyed. "What was that?"
What was that?
My voice barely above a whisper. Liam hit the brakes, but the car didn't stop right away. It was as if the brakes were delayed, as if the car was reluctant to slow down. After a few more seconds, the car finally came to a halt. "What the hell? That's not normal," Liam said, his hands shaking slightly as he tried to restart the engine. We sat in the car, unsure what to do. The trees around us looked darker now, the shadows stretching unnaturally long. The silence outside was deafening, but the car's interior felt alive, as if the vehicle itself was breathing. "I think we should turn around," I said, my voice
This doesn't
shaking.
feel right.
This doesn't feel right. But before anyone could respond, the engine sputtered to life on its own, and we were moving again, faster than before, as if the car had a mind of its own. No one was controlling it. The car veered off the road slightly, the wheel turning on its own, and we felt a force pulling us forward. The road we were on seemed to narrow, turning into an almost desolate, forgotten path. Suddenly, the headlights illuminated a figure standing in the middle of the road. A woman. She was wearing an old-fashioned dress with long dark hair hanging over her face. She didn't move, didn't flinch when we got closer. She just stood there, her body swaying as if caught in some kind of invisible wind. Liam slammed on the brakes, but the car wouldn't stop. It was like the brakes weren't even responding anymore. We were heading straight toward her. I screamed, but Liam didn't know what to do. At the last second, the car swerved sharply to the right, sending us off the road and into the trees. We skidded to a halt, the sound of metal scraping against bark echoing in the night. When we all caught our breath and climbed out of the car, there was no sign of the woman. The road was empty, just the trees and the cold air. Did you see that? I asked, my voice shaking. Liam was pale. I saw her, he whispered. I don't know how we avoided hitting her. We looked at each other, panic setting in. We had to get out of here, but the car wouldn't start. Every time Liam turned the key, it just clicked, like the battery was dead. And that's when we heard it, a faint tapping on the roof of the car. It was slow at first, like something or someone was crawling on top, then faster, more frantic. The tapping turned into scratching, long, drawn-out nails dragging across the metal. I was nearly in tears, but there was no way out. The car's doors were locked, and the engine wouldn't turn over. We were stuck. Liam was trying to get the phone to work, but the signal was dead. The cold feeling from earlier intensified, and we could all feel it. Something was watching us. Something close. The scratching above us stopped suddenly, and we heard the faintest whisper right outside the window. It shouldn't have come.
You should not be here.
I couldn't take it anymore. I bolted out of the car, running into the woods. Liam and the others followed, but when we looked back, the car was gone. The headlights, the radio, the strange presence. It was like the car had just vanished. We eventually made our way back to the main road where we flagged down a passing car. We never spoke much about what happened after that. We left the area as quickly as we could, and none of us ever looked back. But to this day, I wonder if that car ever really left the woods. I haven't driven since. A week later, I received a call from Liam. He had tried to contact the car rental company to report the incident. But when they checked the vehicle, they claimed they had no record of it ever being rented to him. In fact, they said the car was still parked at their lot. There was no record of it ever leaving the area. I can't explain what happened that night. Maybe it was a malfunctioning car. Maybe it was just our minds playing tricks on us. But part of me believes we encountered something that didn't want us to leave. Something that tried to keep us in those woods. Now, whenever I drive, I always make sure I'm never alone. And I keep an eye on the rear view mirror, just in case.